Can you solve all these chemical bonding questions? Bonding in Spear is.
Smart move. Covalent bonding is an accurate answer.
A covalent bond is. Good job. Bonding two nonmetals works well here. Bonding in diamond is. Correct response. Covalent is the most accurate answer.
Valence electrons are. Sharp thinking. Outermost electrons is the right choice.
Bonding in Oxonium ion.
Well done. Dative is the right choice.
P plus O is what type of bond?
Great thinking. Covalent bonding is the right choice.
Alto 3 has a chemical name. Perfect. Aluminium oxide is the correct choice. Ionic bonding involves dash. Great job. The transfer of electrons is the accurate answer. Keiko 3 represents a chemical.
Bravo! Formula is the answer.
Identify the IMF exist in beer.
Solid response. Dipole-dipole forces is a valid choice.
What type of compound is Co2? Smart pick. Molecular compound is the correct choice. Hydrogen bonding is a type of.
Right again. Strong intermolecular force is a valid answer.
Covalent bonding exists between.
Well picked. Non-metals and non-metals is the correct answer.
Ionic bonding exists between a.
Right choice. Metal and a non-metal is the best answer.
Hydrogen bonding occurs between.
You're right. Hydrogen and oxygen is the correct answer.
H20 is the chemical formula for. Nice work. You chose water and it is correct. The chemical formula for Cas is. Valid point. Calcium sulfide is true.
Atoms are held together by dash.
Good thinking. Chemical bonds is the right answer. Transfer or giving off electrons.
Strong choice. Ionic bonding is the right answer.
Which of these is the strongest? Excellent. Ionic bonding is a brilliant choice. An atom with or charge.
Clear logic. Your choice ion is sound and 100% true.
Involves the sharing of electrons.
Exactly. Covalent bonds make sense and it is right choice.
Which sample has hydrogen bonding? Well reasoned. Nara's the correct choice.
Involves the transfer of electrons.
Nice selection. Ionic compounds is the correct and valid answer. Other term for covalent compounds? Correct. Molecular compounds is the right answer. It occurs between metal atoms only. Excellent choice. Metallic bonding is the right answer. Chemical bonds form when atoms dash. You chose share or transfer electrons, and it is correct. A force that holds two atoms together. On track. Chemical bond is the correct answer. What is the chemical name of Nyberg 2? You got it. Your choice nickel bromide is right. The chemical name for Alto 3 is dash. Nicely done. Aluminum oxide is a solid answer. A compound composed of two elements. Excellent. Binary compound is a brilliant choice.
Chemical formula for magnesium oxide.
Well done. MAGO is the right choice.
What is characteristic to nonmetals?
Perfect. High electronegativity is the correct choice.
Where are bonding electrons located?
Well reasoned. Outer energy shell is the correct choice.
They lose electrons in ionic bonding.
Sharp thinking. He dreams is the right choice. The nature of bonding in graphite is
Smart pick. Covalent is the correct choice.
What is the predominant infra for ENCH3? Great thinking. Hydrogen bonding is the right choice. Strong hydrogen bonding is present in.
You're right. HF is the correct answer. Chemical formula for calcium chloride.
Valid point. CAC2 is true.
Ionic bonding are formed between dash.
Right again. Metals and non-metals is a valid answer.
Which electrons take part in bonding?
Solid response. Outer shell electrons is a valid choice. Interactions that hold atoms together. On track. Chemical bonds is the correct answer. Atoms undergo bonding in order to dash.
Nicely done. Attain stability is a solid answer.
Valence electrons determine an atom's.
You got it? Your choice chemical properties is right.
Intramolecular H bonding is present in. Nice work. You chose salicylaldehyde and it is correct.
Which of these is not a chemical bond?
Bravo. Molecule bond is the answer.
What is the chemical name for Fe3?
Correct response. Iron nitrate is the most accurate answer.
In ionic bonding, metals most likely to.
Clear logic. Your choice lose electron is sound and 100% true.
During ionic bonding, metal atoms always.
Strong choice. Lose electrons is the right answer.
Dash orbitals that have the same energy. You chose degenerate orbitals, and it is correct.
The correct chemical name for water is.
Exactly. Dihydrogen monoxide makes sense, and it is right choice. The arrow in a chemical reaction means. Good thinking. Yields is the right answer. The type of bonding in HCl molecule is. Smart move. Polar covalent bond is an accurate answer. Chemical formula formed from 19X and A. Correct. Close is the right answer. What is the chemical name of Al-23? Well picked. Aluminum sulfate is the correct answer.
What element has the chemical symbol SNN?
Good job. Tin works well here. Dash is the number of protons in an atom. Great job. Atomic number is the accurate answer. Evidence of a chemical reaction include. Right choice. Bubbles forming is the best answer. Atoms in a molecule are held together by. Excellent choice. Chemical bonds is the right answer, which is an example of a chemical change. Nice selection. Baking a cake is the correct and valid answer.
Where do chemical reactions mainly occur?
Great job. Among valence electrons is the accurate answer. What is the main focus of today's lesson? Excellent. Ionic and covalent bonding is a brilliant choice.
Name the following chemical compound. P25.
Great thinking. Diphosphorus pentoxide is the right choice.
Electrons that are free to move in metals.
Smart pick. Delocalize electrons is the correct choice.
The bonding present in oxygen gases.
Well picked. A double covalent bond is the correct answer.
Ionic bonding generally is between a dash.
Nice selection. Metal and nonmetal is the correct and valid answer. What is the chemical name for table salt?
Excellent choice. Sodium chloride is the right answer. TiO is sparingly soluble in water due to
Clear logic. Your choice inert pair electron is sound and 100% true. Which is not a type of chemical bonding? Nice work. You chose polar bond and it is correct.
What is the correct chemical name for Bas?
Nicely done. Barium sulfide is a solid answer.
what type of bonding takes place in member 2?
On track. Ionic is the correct answer. Which particle is responsible for bonding? Good job. Electrons works well here. Which bond is formed between the two atoms?
You got it? Your choice ionic bond is right.
Hydrogen bonding is a special case of dash.
Smart move. Dipole is an accurate answer.
What do you call attraction between atoms? Right choice. Chemical bonds is the best answer. The reason that atoms form chemical bonds. Good thinking. Octet rule is the right answer. Which compound is formed by ionic bonding? Exactly. Cooper-2 makes sense, and it is right choice.
What part of the atom does bonding involve?
Bravo. Valence electrons is the answer.
The dash describes the atoms in a compound.
Strong choice. Chemical formula is the right answer. The dash electrons are involved in bonding. You're right. Valence is the correct answer.
How are electrons treated in ionic bonding?
Valid point. They are transferred is true.
What is the strongest intermolecular force?
Solid response. Hydrogen bonding is a valid choice. It occurs between metal and non-metal atoms.
Perfect. Ionic bonding is the correct choice. In which compound is hydrogen bonding found?
Correct. Ammonia is the right answer.
A molecular geometry with 3 bonding pairs is? Well done. Trigonal planar is the right choice. The arrow symbol used in a chemical equation.
Right again. Yield sign is a valid answer.
The bond that links atoms together is called? Well reasoned. Chemical bond is the correct choice. The reason for bonding in ionic compounds is? Correct response. Attraction force is the most accurate answer. Which compound has the weaker chemical bond? You chose covalent, and it is correct.
The chemical formula formed from Ni and S is.
Sharp thinking. Loss is the right choice.
How many bonding electrons are present in FH3?
Exactly. 6 makes sense and it is right choice. Metallic bonding would occur between atoms of.
Sharp thinking. Copper is the right choice.
Which of the following represents a compound? Smart pick. Chemical formula is the correct choice.
What is the main purpose of chemical bonding?
Nice work. You chose to form stable compounds and it is correct.
What determines the properties of a compound?
Good job. Chemical structure works well here.
What particles are shared in a chemical bond?
Nice selection. Valence electrons is the correct and valid answer.
Which of these slows down a chemical reaction?
Perfect. Inhibitor is the correct choice.
A chemical whose simplest units are molecules.
Valid point. Molecular compound is true.
What type of bonding involves non-metals only?
You're right. Covalent is the correct answer.
Which molecule contains 6 bonding electrons?
Well reasoned. With goods is the correct choice.
Which of these is not an intermolecular force?
Solid response. Covalent bonding is a valid choice.
What is the chemical formula nitrogen monoxide?
You chose no, and it is correct.
Identify the intermolecular forces exist in NH3.
Excellent choice. Hydrogen bonding is the right answer.
At D1 could put the chemical symbol for dash.
Clear logic? Your choice. The fluoride ion is sound and 100% true.
A metallic bond is a chemical bond between dash.
Good thinking. Metal atoms is the right answer.
Calcium carbonate in the snail's shell contains.
Correct. Ionic bond is the right answer. Force that holds together atoms in a substance.
Well done. Chemical bonds is the right choice.
Substance made from 2 or more combined atoms.
Great job. Compounds is the accurate answer.
What is the chemical name of this compound? N2s.
Great thinking. Sodium sulfide is the right choice.
Which type of chemical reaction is shown below?
Excellent. Double replacement is a brilliant choice.
In covalent bonding, valence electrons are dash. Right choice. Shared is the best answer.
Ionic bonding is formed between a dash and dash. Strong choice. Metal and non-metal is the right answer.
What type of bonding is present in hydronium ion?
Correct response. Coordinate bond is the most accurate answer.
What electrons are involved in chemical bonding?
Smart move. Valence is an accurate answer.
A group of covalent bond atoms are called a dash.
On track. Molecule is the correct answer.
What is the strongest bonding between molecules?
You got it? Your choice hydrogen bonding is right.
A force that holds two or more atoms together is.
Right again. A chemical bond is a valid answer.
What is the chemical formula for silver nitrate?
Bravo. The most effective is the answer.
The substances produced by the chemical reaction?
Nicely done. Products is a solid answer.
Write the chemical formula for iron bromide.
Well picked. Fib 2 is the correct answer.
Atoms of dash do not usually form chemical bonds.
Nice selection. Group 18 is the correct and valid answer.
This is the chemical formula for calcium carbide.
Perfect. Ca2 is the correct choice.
The chemical formula for bromine monofluoride is.
Right choice. Bref is the best answer.
Predict the bond that will form between B and Fs. Clear logic. Your choice covalent bonding is sound and 100% true. Which compound is not formed by covalent bonding?
You're right. NH4Cl is the correct answer.
Which intermolecular force do all molecules have?
Excellent choice. London dispersion forces is the right answer.
What type of bond is formed by sharing electrons? Strong choice. Covalent is the right answer.
Which type of bonding is never found in elements?
Well picked. Polar covalent is the correct answer.
What kind of chemical bonding that exists in NaCl?
Exactly. Ionic bonding makes sense, and it is right choice.
What happens to the atoms in a chemical reaction?
Nice work. You chose they are rearranged, and it is correct.
Which is the only nonmetal with 4 bonding places?
Valid point. Carbon is true.
Dash are the smallest units of a chemical compound.
Great job. Molecules is the accurate answer.
Which of the following will show covalent bonding?
On track. Cl2 is the correct answer.
The particles responsible for chemical bonding are.
Well reasoned. Valence electrons is the correct choice.
Covalent bonding is shown with dash between atoms.
Bravo. Lines is the answer.
Determine the non-bonding pairs of fluorine in F.
Correct. 3 is the right answer.
Atoms tend to form chemical bonds in order to dash.
Smart move. All of the above is an accurate answer.
The dash represents the location of the electrons.
Well done. Electron cloud is the right choice.
What is the chemical formula for sodium hydroxide?
Good job. Now works well here.
What type of bonding takes place in pure iron Fe?
Great thinking. Metallic is the right choice.
What is the main type of bonding in methane?
Nicely done. Covalent is a solid answer.
Which type of bonding is expected between S and Cl?
Excellent. Polar covalent is a brilliant choice.
The force of attraction between non-polar molecules.
You got it. Your choice London dispersion force is right.
What is the chemical formula for calcium phosphate?
Solid response. Ka is a valid choice.
The electrons involved in bonding between atoms are.
Good thinking. Valence electrons is the right answer. ionic bonding forms between which type of elements?
Correct response. Metal and nonmetal is the most accurate answer.
Which solid contains more than one type of bonding? Sharp thinking. Iodine is the right choice. The modern concept of chemical bonding are based on
Smart pick. Energetic of reactions is the correct choice.
What determines the chemical properties of an atom?
Right again. Valence electrons is a valid answer.
The left side of a chemical reaction is called dash.
You chose reactants, and it is correct.
chemical bonding happens between dash of an element. Valid point. Atoms is true. How many types of bonding are mentioned in the text? Right again. 2 is a valid answer.
The following are the types of chemical bond except.
Well done. Intermolecular bond is the right choice.
What is the chemical formula of potassium carbonate? Exactly. As fast makes sense and it is right choice. Which type of bonding occurs between nonmetals only? Strong choice. Covalent is the right answer. What is the chemical formula? Titanium sulfide. Great thinking. Ninth is the right choice. How many categories of chemical reactions are there?
Smart move. Phi is an accurate answer.
What is iron's charge in the chemical formula faculty? Great job. 3+ is the accurate answer. What is the chemical formula of sulfur hexafluoride? You chose Cef6, and it is correct. What is the resulting structure from bonding called? Correct. Molecule is the right answer.
What type of bonding involves metals and non-metals?
Smart pick. Ionic is the correct choice.
What type of chemical bonding is shown in the model? Well picked. Ionic is the correct answer. Chemical bonds are formed when atoms dash electrons.
You're right. All of the above is the correct answer.
In which molecule is hydrogen bonding the strongest? Nice selection. AF is the correct and valid answer. The chemical compound for sodium phosphate would be. Excellent. Play 4 is a brilliant choice. Vanadium chloride is considered to have. Right choice. Ionic bonding is the best answer. A chemical formula is an expression used to represent.
Good thinking. Elements and compounds is the right answer.
Which of the following chemical bonds is least polar? On track. CH is the correct answer. What is the chemical formula for dichlorine monoxide?
Sharp thinking. CeLO is the right choice.
Electrons involved in bonding are the dash electrons.
Correct response. Valence is the most accurate answer.
Which element is least likely to form chemical bonds?
Perfect. Helium is the correct choice.
In ionic bonding, electrons are transferred from dash. Solid response. Metals to nonmetals is a valid choice. A force of attraction between oppositely charged ions. Clear logic. Your choice ionic bond is sound and 100% true.
What do two atoms form when they are joined together?
Nice work. You chose a chemical bond, and it is correct.
Which intermolecular force is considered the weakest? Well reasoned. London dispersion is the correct choice. Which term identifies a type of intermolecular force? Nicely done. Hydrogen bonding is a solid answer. What is the chemical formula for fluorine trisulfide? Bravo. Panic is the answer. The negative and positive ions are stabilized by dash. You got it. Your choice, electrostatic attraction, is right. A combination of chemical symbols and numbers is a...
Good job. Chemical formula works well here.
Chemical bonds form between the dash of two elements. Excellent choice. Electrons is the right answer. What is the chemical formula for dioxygen difluoride?
Nice selection. O2 is the correct and valid answer.
What force holds the atoms together within a molecule?
Nicely done. Chemical force is a solid answer.
What is the chemical formula when Al+3 and Po4 bond? Smart move. Alpor is an accurate answer. Give an example of a compound formed by ionic bonding. You got it. Your choice, sodium chloride, is right. Which of the following molecules has hydrogen bonding? Well reasoned. Na is the correct choice. This is the interaction that holds two atoms together. You're right. Chemical bond is the correct answer. Which of the following will not have hydrogen bonding? Clear logic. Your choice CH3 is sound and 100% true. This type of bonding occurs between metal and non-metal. Perfect. Ionic is the correct choice. What is the chemical formula when CS and S are formed? Well picked. CS2 is the correct answer. Predict the correct chemical formula for lead dioxide. Well done. Baba is the right choice. Atoms in a chemical compound are held together by dash.
Good thinking. Chemical bonds is the right answer.
How many types of bonding are discussed in the lesson? Good job. 2 works well here. What are the connections between atoms in a molecules? Strong choice. Chemical bonds is the right answer. Which type of bonding is found in non-polar molecules? On track. Covalent bonding is the correct answer. Which of the following is not a type of chemical bond? You chose none of the above, and it is correct. Hydrogen bonding only takes place between hydrogen and... Great thinking. Nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine is the right choice. Ionic bonds are formed by the dash of electrons. Great job. Transfer is the accurate answer. What is the chemical formula for disilicon hexabromide? Bravo. Be patient is the answer.
What is the correct name for the chemical compound AlF3?
Valid point. Aluminum fluoride is true. Which type of chemical bond is formed in aluminum wire? Smart pick.
Metallic is the correct choice.
The bonding of a metal and a non-metal is known as a dash.
Sharp thinking. Ionic bond is the right choice.
How many molecules are in this chemical compound? 2 co.
Right choice. 2 is the best answer. Of these 3 molecules, which has polar covalent bonding? Correct. Hey beer is the right answer. A chemical change always results in the formation of a...
Excellent. New substance is a brilliant choice.
In a chemical formula, what must the total charge equal? Right again. So is a valid answer. Which particles of an atom are responsible for bonding? Correct response. Outer valence electrons is the most accurate answer. Name the acid with the following chemical formula. Schizophore. Exactly. Sulfuric acid makes sense and it is right choice. Organisms get their energy to do work from dash energy.
Excellent choice. Chemical energy is the right answer.
What force holds 2 atoms together in a chemical bond? Solid response. Covalent bond is a valid choice. Write the name for the following chemical formula. Goto 3. Nice work. You chose gallium oxide and it is correct. Which part of the atom is involved in chemical bonding? Excellent choice. The valence electrons is the right answer. The attractive force that holds atoms or ions together. Smart pick. Chemical bonds is the correct choice. Which of these molecules has nonpolar covalent bonding? On track. I2 is the correct answer. The reason for the existence of water in liquid state is? Right choice. Hydrogen bonding is the best answer. What intermolecular forces are found in polar compounds? You're right. Dispersion forces and dipole-dipole is the correct answer.
Atoms form dash with other atoms and become more stable.
Excellent. Chemical bonds is a brilliant choice. What is the correct chemical formula for sodium sulfate? Valid point. Nitsu4 is true. The force that attract atoms and hold together is called.
Smart move. Chemical bond is an accurate answer.
The force that holds 2 atoms together is called a dash. Exactly. Chemical bond makes sense and it is right choice.
What is the chemical name of the following compound? Not the.
Solid response. Nitrogen trioxide is a valid choice. Describes an atom that has a full outermost energy level. Nice selection. Chemically stable is the correct and valid answer. A change in the shape of an object is an example of dash. Great thinking. A physical change is the right choice. What type of bond would form between oxygen and lithium? Right again. Ionic is a valid answer. The electrons are shared and occurs between 2 nonmetals. Sharp thinking. Covalent bond is the right choice. Dash are the starting substances in a chemical equation.
Correct. Reactants is the right answer.
What is the chemical combination of 2 or more elements? Correct response. Compound is the most accurate answer. A chemical reaction that releases energy by light or heat. You got it. Your choice exothermic reaction is right. June 2015-6. ATSP, which substance has metallic bonding?
Strong choice. Silver is the right answer.
Dash is an interaction that holds atoms or ions together.
Well picked. Chemical bond is the correct answer. A change in matter that produces new substances is called a...
Bravo! Chemical reaction is the answer. Which has the weakest forces between particles? Great job. Covalent bonding is the accurate answer. Which elements have the most similar chemical properties? Perfect. Oxygen and sulfur is the correct choice. The rate of reaction of organic compounds is slow due to?
Good thinking. Covalent bonding is the right answer.
Which of the following bonds forms between two nonmetals?
Well reasoned. Covalent bond is the correct choice.
What is the chemical formula of the ionic compound shown?
You chose the most important, and it is correct.
Without forming compounds, noble gas groups satisfy dash. Nicely done. Octet rule is a solid answer. What particles are involved the most in chemical bonding? Nice work. You chose electrons, and it is correct. Covalent bonding is the dash of electrons between atoms. Well done. Sharing is the right choice. What is a group of atoms held together by chemical bonds? Good job. Molecule works well here. Which of these particles are involved in a chemical bond? Clear logic. Your choice electrons is sound and 100% true. What kind of particle is produced after covalent bonding?
Excellent. B molecule is a brilliant choice.
How can you determine the number of electrons in an atom?
Nicely done. Atomic number is a solid answer.
Which type of bonding has low melting and boiling points?
Well picked. Covalent is the correct answer.
When covalent or ionic bonding happens, a dash is formed. Great job. Compound is the accurate answer. The force of attraction that holds atoms or ions together.
Exactly. Chemical bond makes sense, and it is right choice.
Which type of bonding involves the transfer of electrons? Great thinking. Ionic bonding is the right choice. 3 bonding partners and no unshared pairs of electrons. Smart move. Trigonal planar is an accurate answer. Which subatomic particles participate in chemical bonding? Solid response. Electrons is a valid choice. What is the main type of bonding in magnesium oxide? Good thinking. Ionic bonding is the right answer. What is the chemical formula for dinitrogen heptachloride? Well done, wheat is the right choice. What is the correct formula for carbon bonding to hydrogen? Correct, CH4 is the right answer. What is formed when electrons are shared, gained, or lost? Nice work. You chose chemical bonds, and it is correct. Bonding in electrolyte is dash, and dash in non-electrolyte.
On track. Electrovalent and covalent is the correct answer.
An atom that has lost or gained an electron is called a... Excellent choice. I is the right answer. What is the type of bonding that transfers electron called? Perfect. Ionic bonding is the correct choice. All of the elements in a group or family all have the same. Nice selection. Number of valence electrons is the correct and valid answer. Which subatomic particle is involved in chemical bonding? Right again. Valence electron is a valid answer. All of the following are type of chemical bond except dash. Sharp thinking. Van der Waals is the right choice. The rule where an atom must have 8 electrons to be stable. You're right. Octet rule is the correct answer. The dash of an atom is not affected by a chemical reaction. Smart pick. Nucleus is the correct choice. An interaction that holds 2 atoms together is called a... Correct response. Chemical bond is the most accurate answer. Which of the forces of molecular attraction is the weakest? Bravo! Dispersion is the answer, which is described as the force holding 2 atoms together. Oh. Well reasoned. Chemical bond is the correct choice. Electrons that are free to move in metals are called dash. You chose delocalized electrons, and it is correct. What is the joining of atoms to form new substances called? Clear logic. Your choice, chemical bonding, is sound and 100% true. A dash is the force that holds atoms together in a compound. Valid point. Chemical bond is true. Which part of the atom is responsible for chemical bonding? Good job. Outer valence electrons works well here. What do the lines in a chemical structure diagram represent? Right choice. Bonds between atoms is the best answer. Which of the following compounds is formed by ionic bonding? Strong choice. Magefjell-2 is the right answer. Which of the following is a chemical formula? You got it. Your choice, NaCl, is right. What is the only part of the atom that makes a chemical bond? You got it. Your choice, valence electrons, is right. What is the correct chemical formula for nitrogen triiodide? Excellent choice. Yes is the right answer. What is the chemical formula for a bond between Li1+ and N3? Excellent. Curse is a brilliant choice. What is the process of balancing a chemical equation called? Right again. Balancing reaction is a valid answer. A change in matter that makes a new substance is called dash. Nice work. You chose chemical reaction, and it is correct. Chemical bonds between metals and non-metals are called what? Valid point. Ionic bonds is true.
Compounds to the right of the I yield in a chemical reaction.
Good thinking. Product is the right answer. A substance that enters into a chemical reaction is called a... Great thinking. Reactant is the right choice. What type of chemical bonding interaction is observed in tow? Correct Correct response. Covalent is the most accurate answer.
What is the correct chemical formula for tribromine octoxide?
Smart move. With some is an accurate answer. A force of attraction that holds two atoms together is called. Solid response. Chemical bond is a valid choice.
What is the main type of bonding in calcium chloride?
Well picked. Ionic bonding is the correct answer. A substance that helps speed up a chemical reaction is a dash. You chose catalyst, and it is correct. Why do atoms combine with one another to form a chemical bond? Nicely done. To attain stability is a solid answer. What subatomic particle is transferred in the bonding process? Perfect. Valence electron is the correct choice.
Sharing of electrons to form a chemical bond is dash bonding.
Strong choice. Covalent is the right answer.
The dash is the location of protons and neutrons in the atom.
Correct. Nucleus is the right answer. Which of the following is not an example of covalent bonding? You're right. NAF is the correct answer. A neutral group of atoms held together by covalent bonds is a clear logic. Your choice molecule is sound and 100% true.
A pastry chef bakes a cheesecake. What is this an example of?
Well reasoned. Chemical change is the correct choice. Complete the sentence. During a chemical reaction, atoms dash. Great job. Get rearranged is the accurate answer. What is one observable characteristic of a chemical reaction? Smart pick. Bubbles forming is the correct choice.
Which compounds contains both ionic and covalent bonding?
Right choice. Na is the best answer.
It involves the transfer of electron from metals to nonmetals.
Exactly. Ionic bonding makes sense, and it is right choice. What is the chemical name for the binary compound listed Q3-2? Good job. Copper nitride works well here. The substances which combine in a chemical reaction is called. Sharp thinking. Reactants is the right choice. This is the electron in the outermost energy level of an atom. Well done. Valence electron is the right choice. What do you call an interaction that holds two atoms together? On track. A chemical bond is the correct answer. Which type of bonding is characterized by a lattice structure? Nice selection. Ionic bonding is the correct and valid answer. What is the optimal distance between atoms in a chemical bond? Bravo. Minimum distance is the answer.
How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format.
Nicely done. Contact Narayan Changder is a solid answer.